The rain was supposed to wash away her problems, but for Evelyn Hart, CEO of a multi-million-dollar empire, it was about to bring her face to face with the one man who would either save her heart or destroy everything she'd worked for. When Marcus Reed spotted the broken-down luxury car on that fateful morning, he had no idea the stranded driver was the powerful woman whose company he desperately wanted to work for. One act of kindness would spark a forbidden romance that would have boardrooms buzzing and reputations hanging in the balance. But when a single photograph threatens to expose their secret, Marcus and Evelyn must choose between love and legacy, between their hearts and their futures. What happens when a mechanic falls for a CEO and the whole world is watching? Will their love survive the ultimate test of class, power, and prejudice? Or will society's expectations tear them apart before they even have a chance to begin? If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're from. I want to know if love stories like this give you hope no matter what corner of the world you're in. The rain started as a whisper against Marcus Reed's windshield at 7 in the morning. By the time he spotted the hazard lights blinking through the gray mist on Riverside Parkway, it had grown into a steady drumbeat that matched his racing heart. He was already running late for the most important interview of his life. The dealership had finally called him back after 3 months of waiting, and today was his chance to move up from Gus's small garage to something bigger. Something that might finally make his sister Tasha stop worrying about his future. But the luxury sedan sat tilted on the shoulder like a wounded bird, its driver standing beside it in the rain. Marcus didn't even think. He pulled his truck behind the car, flipped on his own hazards, and grabbed his work light from the back seat. The woman turned as his boots crunched on the wet gravel. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe his age, with dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail that was quickly losing its battle with the rain. Her business suit looked expensive, but she wore it like armor rather than decoration. "Car trouble?" he called out, already knowing the answer. "The engine just started making this awful noise and died," she said, pushing a strand of wet hair from her face. "I was supposed to be somewhere 10 minutes ago." Marcus nodded toward her car. "Mind if I take a look?" She stepped aside, and he popped the hood. The problem showed itself immediately. The serpentine belt had slipped off its track, probably from the wet weather. A simple fix, but not something she could handle on the roadside without tools. "Good news," he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Nothing's broken, just need to get this belt back where it belongs." He worked quickly, his fingers sure despite the rain making everything slippery. The woman, Evelyn, she told him when he introduced himself, stood close enough to hand him tools but far enough away not to crowd him. "You do this a lot?" she asked, watching him adjust the belt tension. "Fix cars? Every day? Help strangers on the highway?" He glanced up with a slight smile. "Not as often as I probably should. Most people would have driven right by." Marcus shrugged and reached for a dry rag to clean a moisture-logged connector. "My mom always said you never know when you might be the answer to someone's prayer, even if it's just a small one." Something shifted in Evelyn's expression at that. She watched him work in comfortable silence after that, only speaking to answer his questions about when the noise had started and whether she'd noticed any warning signs. By the time he had her engine purring again, the rain had softened to a light mist. Marcus gathered his tools and closed the hood with a satisfying thunk. "How much do I owe you?" Evelyn asked, reaching for her purse. "Nothing." Marcus wiped his hands one final time. "Just pay it forward when you get the chance." "Are you sure? I know you were heading somewhere important, too." He'd been so focused on the repair that he'd almost forgotten about his interview. Now the reality hit him like cold water. It was nearly 8 o'clock. Even if he left right now, he'd be at least 30 minutes late. Yeah, well, he managed a smile that felt only slightly forced. Some things are more important than being on time. Evelyn studied his face for a moment, as if she was memorizing it. Thank you, Marcus. Really, this could have been a disaster. Just glad I could help. He climbed back into his truck, then rolled down the window. Drive safe, Evelyn. And hey, whatever meeting you were rushing to, I bet they'll understand when you explain what happened. She smiled then, the first real smile he'd seen from her, and it transformed her entire face. I hope so. Marcus followed her sedan as they pulled back onto the parkway, watching her taillights through the morning traffic. At the first exit, she turned left toward downtown while he continued straight. He told himself the small pang in his chest was just disappointment about the interview, not the fact that he'd probably never see her again. 15 minutes later, sitting in his truck outside a coffee shop, Marcus stared at his phone screen. 3 missed calls from the dealership. He dialed back, but it went straight to voicemail. Hi, this is Marcus Reed, he said after the beep. I know I'm late for our 8 o'clock appointment. I had to stop to help someone with car trouble. I understand if you need to reschedule, but I'm still very interested in the position. Thank you. He hung up and leaned back against the headrest. Tasha was going to kill him. She'd been so excited about this interview, had even helped him pick out his shirt last night. The bell above the diner door chimed as he walked inside, water still dripping from his jacket. The morning rush had thinned out, leaving mostly older folks lingering over coffee and newspapers. Marcus ordered black coffee and found a booth by the window where he could watch the rain. 2 minutes later, the bell chimed again. Marcus looked up from his cup and nearly choked on his coffee. Evelyn stood in the doorway, shaking raindrops from her jacket and looking around the small restaurant. Their eyes met across the room, and her face lit up with surprise and something that might have been relief. Well, she said, sliding into the seat across from him a moment later. This is either the best coincidence ever, or the universe trying to tell us something. Maybe both, Marcus said, still trying to process the fact that she was here. Your meeting go okay? A shadow crossed her face. It got postponed. Yours? Same. He took another sip of coffee. Probably for the best. I would have shown up looking like I'd been wrestling with an engine in the rain. Evelyn laughed, and the sound warmed something in Marcus's chest that had nothing to do with the coffee. Which you had been. Which I had been, he agreed. The waitress came by to take Evelyn's order. Tea with honey, no sugar, and they settled into easy conversation. She asked about his work at the garage, and he found himself telling her about Gus, who'd taught him everything he knew about cars, and quite a bit about life. He sounds like a good man to work for, Evelyn said. The best. He gave me a chance when nobody else would. Right out of high school, I didn't have much experience with anything except fixing my mom's old Honda. But Gus saw something in me, I guess. It's not hard to see, Evelyn said quietly. Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks and took another sip of coffee to cover it. What about you? What kind of work keeps you in business suits at 7 in the morning? The complicated kind, she said with a rueful smile. Lots of meetings. Lots of decisions that affect other people's lives. Sometimes I wonder if I'm cut out for it. You seem pretty capable to me. You've known me for exactly, she checked her watch, 47 minutes. Sometimes that's enough. Their conversation meandered through safe topics, siblings, favorite foods, movies they'd seen recently. Marcus learned that Evelyn had a protective father who called her every morning and that she'd never changed a tire in her life, but wasn't embarrassed about it. Everyone has different skills, she said, when Marcus teased her gently about it. I'm very good at reading contracts and terrible at anything mechanical. Well, now you know a mechanic. The words hung between them, loaded with possibility. Evelyn's phone buzzed against the table, and she glanced at it with a slight frown. I should probably go, she said, but she didn't move to leave. Yeah, me too. Marcus didn't move either. Finally, Evelyn stood and pulled on her jacket. Thank you for the coffee conversation. And for earlier, obviously. Thank you for making getting rained on worth it. They walked out to the parking lot together, the silence comfortable but charged. At her car, Evelyn turned to face him. This might be forward of me, she said. But would you like to get coffee again sometime, when we're not both running late for things? Marcus felt his smile spread wide across his face. I'd like that very much. They exchanged numbers, thumbs flying over phone screens with the urgency of people afraid the moment might disappear. When Evelyn's phone rang, a sharp, professional sound, they both jumped. I really do have to go now, she said, answering quickly with a crisp, Hello, this is Evelyn, as she got into her car. Marcus watched her drive away, this time with her number saved in his phone and the promise of seeing her again. He sat in his truck for a full minute, grinning like an idiot at the rain-spotted windshield. His phone rang. The dealership. Marcus, this is Janet from Patterson Motors. I'm so sorry we missed you this morning. Something came up with our service manager, and he had to leave unexpectedly. Could we reschedule for tomorrow at 10? Absolutely, Marcus said, still riding the high of the morning's unexpected turns. 10 o'clock works perfectly. Great. Oh, and Marcus, don't worry about this morning. Things happen. We appreciate you calling to explain. Marcus hung up and started his truck, Evelyn's smile still vivid in his memory. Maybe missing that interview had been exactly what was supposed to happen. 20 minutes later, at Gus's garage, Marcus was elbow-deep in a brake job when Gus wandered over with a steaming cup of coffee and a knowing look. You're whistling, Gus observed. Am I? Sweet Caroline. You only whistle Neil Diamond when something good happens. Gus leaned against the workbench. The interview go well? Marcus straightened up, wiping his hands on his coveralls. Actually, it got postponed. But I had an interesting morning anyway. He told Gus about the broken-down car and the woman in the rain, though he left out the part about coffee and phone numbers. Some things were too new to share, even with Gus. You stopped to help someone instead of rushing to your interview, Gus said when Marcus finished. It wasn't a question. Yeah. And you'd do it again? Yeah, I would. Gus nodded slowly. Your mama raised you right, boy. She'd be proud. The warmth in Marcus's chest had nothing to do with coffee now. His mother had been gone for 3 years, but some days he could still hear her voice telling him to be the kind of man who stopped for strangers in the rain. At lunch, he texted Evelyn, Hope your postponed meeting went well when it finally happened. Her response came back quickly. It did, thank you. Hope your interview rescheduling worked out too. Tomorrow at 10. Wish me luck? You don't need it, but you have it anyway. Marcus stared at that small emoji longer than was probably healthy. Such a simple thing, but it felt like a promise. The afternoon flew by in a blur of oil changes and tire rotations. Every time his phone buzzed, Marcus found himself hoping it was another text from Evelyn, but she seemed to understand the boundaries of new acquaintance. One text was friendly. Too many would be presumptuous. At 5 o'clock, Gus flipped the sign to closed and began the ritual of counting the day's receipts. Marcus was washing his hands at the industrial sink when a black sedan pulled into the parking lot. The woman who stepped out wasn't Evelyn, but she carried herself with the same kind of quiet authority. Professional suit, confident stride, expensive handbag held like it contained important things. "Excuse me," she said as Marcus stepped outside. "Are you Marcus Reed?" "Yes, ma'am." She extended a business card and a small, cream-colored envelope. "I'm Priya Shah, Ms. Hart's assistant. She asked me to give you this." Marcus looked down at the envelope, his name written across it in careful handwriting. "Ms. Hart?" "Evelyn Hart," Priya clarified with a small smile. "She wanted to thank you properly for your help this morning." Marcus opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a note card with simple, elegant script. "Marcus, thank you again for stopping to help me today. Your kindness meant more than you know. If you're free tomorrow evening around 5, I'd love to buy you dinner. Nothing fancy, just a proper thank you between friends. Evelyn P.S. There's a little cafe called Penny's on Maple Street. They have the best soup in the city." Below her signature was her phone number, though he already had it from that morning. "She didn't have to do this," Marcus said, looking up at Priya. "She wanted to," Priya replied. "Ms. Hart doesn't forget when someone goes out of their way for her." After Priya drove away, Marcus read the note 3 more times. There was something formal about it, almost old-fashioned in its courtesy. But underneath that formality was something warmer. Personal. He was still holding the note when Tasha called. "How did the interview go?" she asked without preamble. "Got postponed until tomorrow, but I have other news." "Good news, or Marcus did something stupid news?" "Good news, I think. I met someone." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Marcus checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. "Tasha?" "I'm here. I'm just trying to process the fact that my brother, who hasn't been on a date in 8 months, met someone today." "It wasn't a date. I helped her fix her car." "And?" Marcus found himself smiling at the memory. "And we had coffee, and she wants to have dinner tomorrow." "She asked you out?" "It's not, well, maybe. It's complicated." Tasha's laugh was warm and familiar. "Baby brother, it's never complicated when someone wants to buy you dinner. What's her name?" "Evelyn." "And what does Evelyn do for work?" Marcus paused. That was a good question. He knew she had meetings and wore business suits and carried herself like someone important, but she'd been careful not to say exactly what she did. "I don't know yet," he admitted. "Well, you'll find out tomorrow at dinner. I'm proud of you for putting yourself out there." "It's just dinner, Tasha." "It's never just dinner, Marcus. Trust me on this one." That night, Marcus lay in his small apartment, staring at the ceiling and thinking about rain-soaked hair and the way Evelyn's whole face changed when she smiled. He thought about the careful script of her note and how she'd remembered his name without having to ask twice. Mostly, though, he thought about the moment in the diner when she'd asked if he wanted to have coffee again, and how her voice had carried just the smallest tremor of uncertainty, as if she wasn't sure what he'd say, as if someone like her could ever doubt that someone like him would say yes. Tomorrow, he decided, he was going to find out who Evelyn Hart really was. All of her, not just the woman who got stranded in the rain. He fell asleep with her note on his nightstand, and the promise of tomorrow warm in his chest. Marcus stood in front of his bathroom mirror the next morning, adjusting his tie for the 3rd time. The interview at Patterson Motors was in 2 hours, and his hands wouldn't stay steady. "Come on, man," he muttered to his reflection. "It's just a job interview." But it wasn't just anything. This was his chance to move beyond oil changes and break jobs into something bigger. Fleet management for a major dealership meant better pay, benefits, maybe even a path toward opening his own shop someday. His phone buzzed with a text from Evelyn. "Good luck today. You're going to do great." The simple message settled something in his chest. He pocketed his phone and headed out into what had turned into a beautiful morning. The rain from yesterday, nothing but a memory. Patterson Motors gleamed in the morning sun, all chrome and glass and perfectly detailed cars, arranged like chess pieces on the lot. Marcus parked his 10-year-old truck between a BMW and a Mercedes and tried not to feel intimidated. The interview went better than he'd dared hope. Janet, the hiring manager, walked him through the service bay and introduced him to the current fleet coordinator, who seemed genuinely interested in Marcus's experience with different makes and models. "You've got impressive diagnostic skills for someone who's mostly worked at an independent shop," the coordinator said, looking over Marcus's portfolio of completed projects. "How do you feel about managing a team?" "I've been helping train the newer guys at Gus's for the past 2 years," Marcus replied. "I like teaching people how to see what a car is trying to tell them." They talked for another 30 minutes about scheduling, customer service, and Marcus's long-term goals. When Janet walked him to the lobby, she was smiling. "We'll be in touch by early next week," she said, shaking his hand. "But I'll tell you right now, Marcus, you made a strong impression today." Marcus was still riding high on the interview when he stopped for lunch at a sandwich shop near the dealership. He ordered his usual turkey and Swiss and found a table by the window to text Tasha the good news. That's when he saw the television mounted in the corner, tuned to the local business news. Breaking: Hart Manufacturing names new CEO, scrolled across the bottom of the screen. The camera cut to a woman standing outside a gleaming office building, surrounded by reporters and camera crews. She wore a navy blue suit and held herself with the kind of composed confidence that comes from years of public speaking. Marcus's sandwich turned to ash in his mouth. It was Evelyn. The reporter's voice faded into background noise as Marcus stared at the screen. "A youngest CEO in the company's 50-year history, following her father's retirement. Significant changes expected in the coming quarters. Evelyn Hart, CEO." The woman he'd helped fix a broken-down car yesterday morning was the head of one of the biggest manufacturing companies in the state. Marcus's phone rang, jolting him back to reality. Unknown number. "Hello? Marcus? This is Priya Shah. We met yesterday evening?" "Yeah, I remember. Ms. Hart asked me to call. Something's come up with her schedule today, and she needs to postpone dinner until tomorrow. Same time, same place, if that works for you." Marcus looked back at the television screen, where Evelyn was answering questions with practiced ease. "Sure," he heard himself say. "Tomorrow works fine." "Wonderful. And Marcus? She asked me to tell you she's looking forward to it." After Priya hung up, Marcus sat in the sandwich shop for another 20 minutes, staring at his phone and trying to process what he'd learned. Evelyn hadn't lied to him exactly. She'd just left out the part where she was worth millions of dollars and ran a company with thousands of employees. The rational part of his brain understood why. Rich, powerful people probably didn't go around advertising their status to strangers. But another part of him, the part that had been excited about getting to know her, felt like he'd been played. His phone buzzed with another text from Evelyn. "Rain check on dinner tonight? Work emergency. Tomorrow for sure." Marcus stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "No problem. Hope everything works out okay." It wasn't her fault that he felt foolish. She didn't know he'd seen the news. She was just postponing dinner, not ending the world. But as he drove back to Gus's garage, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. "You look like someone stole your lunch money," Gus observed when Marcus walked into the garage. "Found out something about that woman I mentioned yesterday?" "Bad something?" Marcus grabbed his coveralls from the hook and pulled them on slowly. She's the new CEO of Hart Manufacturing. Gus let out a low whistle. Richard Hart's daughter? You know him? Know of him. Good reputation. Built that company from nothing. Treats his people fair from what I hear. Gus studied Marcus's face. This a problem for you? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. Why? Marcus opened his mouth to explain and realized he didn't have a good answer. Because she was rich? Because she was powerful? Because she moved in circles that didn't include guys who fixed cars for a living? Because she didn't tell me, he said finally. Did you tell her you've been saving every penny for 3 years to maybe open your own shop someday? Did you mention that you send half your paycheck to help with your sister's nursing school loans? That's different. How? Marcus pulled a wrench from the toolbox harder than necessary. Because my stuff doesn't matter to anyone but me and Tasha. Boy. Gus's voice carried a note of disappointment that hit Marcus like a physical blow. Your mama didn't raise you to measure people by their bank accounts, not others, and not yourself. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of routine maintenance and Marcus's own tangled thoughts. By closing time, he'd talked himself in and out of canceling dinner with Evelyn a dozen times. That evening, he called Tasha. So, how was the mystery dinner date? She asked. Postponed, and it's complicated. More complicated than yesterday? Marcus told her about the news report, about learning who Evelyn really was. Tasha listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. So let me get this straight, she said when he finished. You're upset because the woman you like is successful? I'm upset because she didn't tell me she was successful. Marcus, honey, you've known this woman for exactly 1 day. She doesn't owe you her life story. But don't you think it's weird? I mean, what's someone like her want with someone like me? The silence on the other end of the line stretched long enough to make Marcus uncomfortable. Someone like you? Tasha repeated finally. Stopped to help a stranger in the rain when he had somewhere important to be? Someone like you has never asked for a handout in his life, even when things got tough after Mama died. Someone like you taught himself everything he knows and still finds time to mentor kids at the community center on weekends. Tasha, I'm not finished. Someone like you is kind and honest and hardworking and funny. And if this Evelyn woman can't see that, then she's not as smart as her fancy title makes her sound. Marcus felt some of the tension in his chest ease. When did my little sister get so wise? Must be the nursing school. They teach us about bedside manner. The next day brought gray skies and the threat of more rain. Marcus spent the morning working on a particularly stubborn transmission, losing himself in the familiar rhythm of diagnosis and repair. It wasn't until Gus called him over to the office that he realized how much time had passed. Phone call, Gus said, holding out the receiver. Patterson Motors. Marcus's heart jumped into his throat. Hello? Marcus, this is Janet. I have good news. We'd like to offer you the fleet coordinator position. The rest of the conversation passed in a blur of salary figures, start dates, and benefits packages. When Marcus hung up, Gus was grinning like he'd won the lottery himself. Well? Gus demanded. I got it. I knew you would. Gus clapped him on the shoulder. When do you start? 2 weeks. Time to finish up my current projects and help you find someone to take over my responsibilities. Take your time finding the right fit. This old place has been good to me, but it's even better with good people in it. Marcus spent the rest of the afternoon in a strange mixture of elation and anxiety. The job offer was everything he'd hoped for and more. But it also meant leaving the only workplace that had ever felt like home. At 4:30, He changed out of his coveralls and into the clean shirt he'd brought for dinner. His reflection in the small bathroom mirror looked nervous, but determined. Penny's Cafe turned out to be exactly the kind of place Marcus would have chosen himself. Small, warm, with mismatched chairs and the smell of homemade bread hanging in the air. He arrived 10 minutes early and claimed a corner table where he could watch the door. Evelyn walked in at exactly 5 o'clock, scanning the room until her eyes found his. She'd traded yesterday's business suit for dark jeans and a soft green sweater that made her eyes look even warmer than he remembered. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said, sliding into the chair across from him. "Why wouldn't I?" Something flickered across her face. Relief, maybe, or surprise. "I don't know. Yesterday was complicated." The waitress appeared before Marcus could respond, and they ordered soup and sandwiches with the easy rhythm of people who'd found their footing with each other. "So," Evelyn said when they were alone again, "tell me about your interview. Did you get the job?" "Actually, yeah. They called this afternoon." "Marcus, that's wonderful." Her smile was bright and genuine, without a trace of the careful composure he'd seen on the news. "What's the position?" He told her about Patterson Motors, about the fleet coordinator role, and what it would mean for his future. She listened with the kind of attention that made him feel like his words mattered. "You should be proud," she said when he finished. "That's a big step up." "It is, though I'll miss working with Gus. He's been like a father to me since my mom died." "I'm sorry about your mother." "It's been 3 years. The grief gets easier, but you never stop missing the person, you know?" Evelyn nodded, and something in her expression suggested she understood loss, in a way that went beyond polite sympathy. Their food arrived, and the conversation meandered through safer territory. Favorite books, places they'd traveled, embarrassing childhood stories. Marcus found himself relaxing in spite of everything he now knew about who she was. It wasn't until they were sharing a piece of apple pie that Evelyn brought up work. "I have a confession," she said, fork halfway to her mouth. "Yesterday, when I said I worked in meetings and decisions, that wasn't the whole truth." "I know," Marcus said quietly. She set down her fork. "You know, I saw you on the news yesterday. The announcement about Hart Manufacturing." A flush crept up Evelyn's neck. "I should have told you right away. I was going to, but then we were having such a nice conversation, and I liked that you didn't know. I liked that you were talking to me, not to what I do for a living." "I get that," Marcus said, and was surprised to realize he meant it. "Must be hard to know if people like you for you or for what you can do for them." "Exactly." Her relief was visible. "I'm sorry I wasn't more honest from the start. I'm sorry I got weird about it when I found out." "Did you get weird about it?" Marcus considered lying, then decided they'd had enough half-truths between them. "A little. It's intimidating, you know? Finding out that someone you like is, well, someone really important." "I'm not important. I'm just a person with a job that happens to come with a lot of responsibility and not nearly enough sleep." "Come on, Evelyn. You run a company. You make decisions that affect hundreds of people. That's important." "So do you." "I fix cars." "You keep people safe on the road. You help them get to work, get home to their families, get to the hospital when someone they love is sick." She leaned forward slightly. "You stopped to help a stranger in the rain when you had somewhere important to be. That's not just fixing cars, Marcus. That's caring about people." Something warm and complicated settled in Marcus's chest. The way she said it made his work sound noble instead of ordinary. "When you put it like that," he said, "it's the only way I see it." They walked out to the parking lot together as the sun set behind a bank of clouds. At Evelyn's car, she turned to face him. "I'd like to see you again," she said. "If you want to, now that we're both being completely honest." "I'd like that too. How about Saturday? There's this place I know. Nothing fancy, just a good view and decent coffee." "Sounds perfect." She was reaching for her car door when Marcus spoke again. "Evelyn, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why me? I mean, you could have dinner with anyone. Why a mechanic from a neighborhood garage?" She was quiet for so long that Marcus wondered if he'd overstepped. Then she smiled, soft and a little sad. "Because when you looked at me yesterday morning, you saw someone who needed help, not someone who could help you. And because when you decided to miss your interview to fix my car, you made that choice without knowing my last name, or what I do, or what I might be able to offer you in return." She paused, keys jingling softly in her hand. "And because when I'm with you, I don't feel like I have to perform. I can just be Evelyn." Marcus felt something shift inside his chest, like a door opening that he hadn't realized was closed. "Just Evelyn is pretty great," he said. Her smile could have powered the whole parking lot. "Saturday, then?" "Saturday." He watched her drive away, this time without the certainty that he might never see her again. This time with plans and the promise of more conversation, more of those moments when her careful composure slipped, and he caught glimpses of who she was underneath all that responsibility. His phone buzzed with a text from Tasha. "How was dinner?" Marcus typed back. "Complicated, but good complicated." "The best kind. I want details tomorrow." Marcus pocketed his phone and sat in his truck for a moment, processing the evening. CEO or not, Evelyn was still the woman who'd stood in the rain looking grateful instead of entitled. Still the person who'd asked about his dreams instead of talking about her own accomplishments. Maybe Gus was right. Maybe his mother had raised him to see people for who they were, not what they had. And maybe, just maybe, he was exactly the kind of person someone like Evelyn needed in her life. Saturday morning arrived crisp and clear, the kind of day that made Marcus grateful to be alive. He'd spent Friday evening at Tasha's apartment, enduring her gentle interrogation about Evelyn while helping her study for an anatomy exam. "So she's rich," Tasha had said, highlighting a passage about cardiac valves. And I don't know what someone like her sees in someone like me." "Marcus." Tasha had set down her highlighter and fixed him with the look she'd been perfecting since she was 12 and he was 14. "Stop that." "Stop what?" "Stop making yourself smaller because someone else is successful. You think she's pretending to like you for some mysterious reason?" "Maybe. I don't know. Rich people are complicated." "People are complicated," Tasha had corrected. "Rich or poor. But you know what's not complicated? The way someone looks at you when they're interested. And from what you've told me, this woman looks at you like she sees something special." Now, driving to meet Evelyn at the coffee place she'd suggested, Marcus tried to hold on to his sister's confidence. But the location Evelyn had picked, a small cafe in the arts district downtown, felt like foreign territory. He found a parking spot 3 blocks away and walked past galleries with names he couldn't pronounce, and boutiques selling individual items that cost more than his monthly grocery budget. By the time he reached the cafe, his palms were sweating despite the cool air. Evelyn was already there, sitting at a small table by the window with 2 steaming cups in front of her. She'd dressed down again, faded jeans, a soft blue cardigan, hair loose around her shoulders. When she spotted him through the glass, her face lit up with a smile that made all his nervousness seem foolish. "I took the liberty of ordering for you," she said as he slid into the chair across from her. "Black coffee, No sugar. Was I right? Perfect. He wrapped his hands around the warm mug and took a grateful sip. How did you know? Lucky guess. Plus, you seem like the kind of person who takes things straight. No complications. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? In my experience, it's rare. They talked easily about small things: the weather, weekend plans, a book she was reading about sustainable manufacturing. Marcus found himself relaxing again, settling into the comfortable rhythm they'd discovered over dinner. Can I ask you something? Evelyn said, stirring honey into her tea. Sure. What's it like, working with your hands all day? I mean, really working with them? Creating something or fixing something? Marcus considered the question. Most people asked about the money or the hours or whether he planned to move up to something better. No one had ever asked about the actual work itself. It's satisfying, he said finally. When someone brings me a car that won't start or makes a weird noise, it's like solving a puzzle. The car is trying to tell me what's wrong. I just have to listen carefully enough to understand. That sounds almost like a conversation. It is, in a way. Each engine has its own personality, its own way of communicating. Some are dramatic. They'll make terrible noises over the smallest thing. Others are stoic. They'll run on 3 cylinders for months without complaining. Evelyn leaned forward slightly, genuinely interested. Which type do you prefer working on? The stoic ones. When they finally break down and come to me, they're really sick. It's like being trusted with something important. I never thought about it that way. Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. Sorry, I get carried away talking about work sometimes. Don't apologize. It's wonderful to hear someone talk about their job like they love it. Most of the people I meet in business treat work like something they have to endure to get to the rest of their life. What about you? Do you love what you do? A shadow passed over Evelyn's face. That's complicated. I love the company itself, what it builds, the people who work there. My father started Hart Manufacturing in his garage 40 years ago, and it still feels like a family business in a lot of ways. But being CEO is different from loving the company. There are decisions that keep me up at night, compromises that feel wrong but might be necessary. I'm still figuring out how to balance what's best for the business with what feels right in my heart. Marcus heard something in her voice that reminded him of his own uncertainty when he'd first started working on complex repairs. Sounds like you're still learning the language. What do you mean? Like with cars. When I started at Gus's, I knew how to change oil and replace brake pads, but I couldn't really hear what the engines were trying to tell me. That took time and patience and making mistakes. Evelyn smiled. Are you comparing running a corporation to being a mechanic? Maybe. Both require listening carefully and trusting your instincts, right? You might be onto something there. They finished their coffee and walked outside into the mild afternoon. The arts district was busy with weekend foot traffic. Couples browsing galleries, families with strollers, groups of friends spilling out of restaurants. Want to walk around a bit? Evelyn asked. There's a little park a few blocks from here with a nice view of the river. Marcus nodded, and they fell into step together, weaving through the crowd. At a red light, Evelyn's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and frowned. Everything okay? Marcus asked. Work thing. It can wait. But Marcus noticed how her shoulders tensed, how her easy smile became more careful. They walked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, but he could feel her attention dividing between the conversation and whatever was in that text message. You know, he said as they reached the park, if you need to handle something, I understand. No, it's fine. I'm here with you. But you're worried about whatever that text said. Evelyn stopped walking and looked at him with something that might have been surprise. How did you know? You get this little line right here when you're thinking about something serious, Marcus said, touching the space between his own eyebrows. And your voice changes, gets more formal. I do that? It's not bad, just different from how you sound when it's just us talking. They found a bench overlooking the river, and Evelyn pulled out her phone. Would you mind if I just handled this quickly? It's probably nothing important, but take your time. Marcus watched her scroll through what looked like several messages, her frown deepening with each one. Finally, she made a call. Priya? Yes, I saw your messages. What exactly did Cameron say? A long pause while she listened. I don't care what it looks like to the board. I'm not going to stop living my life because some people have too much time to gossip. Another pause. No, absolutely not. We're not issuing any statements about my personal life. If anyone has questions about my professional capabilities, they can look at the quarterly reports. She hung up and sat staring at the river for a moment, her phone clenched in her hand. Bad news? Marcus asked gently. Stupid news. Someone saw us having dinner Thursday night and took a picture. Now there are rumors floating around that I'm dating someone inappropriate for a CEO. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Inappropriate how? Oh, you know, the usual classist nonsense. Questions about whether I'm making good decisions if I'm mixing social circles. The careful way she said it told Marcus everything he needed to know. He'd been naive to think that two people having coffee was just two people having coffee. For someone like Evelyn, everything was complicated by who was watching and what they might think. Maybe they're right, he said quietly. What do you mean? Maybe this is a bad idea. You and me. Evelyn turned to face him fully, eyes flashing with something that might have been anger. Because of what some narrow-minded gossips think? Because they're not wrong. We're from different worlds, Evelyn. And your world has rules I don't understand. My world, she said firmly, doesn't get to choose who I care about. The word hung between them. Care. Not like not enjoy spending time with. Care. But it affects your work, Marcus said. Your reputation. Let me worry about my reputation. Easy for you to say. You're not the one being called inappropriate. As soon as the words left his mouth, Marcus regretted them. Evelyn's face went carefully blank, the same composed mask he'd seen on the news. You're right, she said after a long moment. It is easier for me. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. That came out wrong. He struggled to find the words. I don't want to be the reason people question your judgment. And I don't want to be the reason you feel like you have to hide who you are or apologize for what you do. They sat in silence for several minutes, watching boats move slowly up and down the river. Marcus tried to imagine what his life would look like if he continued seeing Evelyn. Would there always be people watching, judging, finding reasons why they didn't belong together? What are you thinking? Evelyn asked softly. That this is more complicated than I thought it would be. Most things worth doing are complicated. Marcus looked at her profile, the way the afternoon light caught the gold in her brown hair. Is this worth doing? Us? I think so. But it has to be worth it to both of us. Marcus thought about Tasha, who'd never let anyone make her feel small for choosing nursing over something more traditionally prestigious. About Gus, who'd built a good life doing honest work and sleeping well at night. About his mother, who taught him that a person's worth had nothing to do with their job title or bank account. I don't want to hide from anyone, he said finally. But I also don't want to make your life harder. What if we just take it slow? See how we feel, not how other people think we should feel? You mean ignore the gossips? I mean focus on what's real, which is this: you and me, sitting by a river, trying to figure out if we want to keep getting to know each other. Marcus felt some of the tension in his chest ease. When you put it that way, it sounds simple. The best things usually are. They walked back toward the cafe as the sun began to set, the conversation lighter but still tinged with the reality of what they were navigating. At Evelyn's car, she turned to face him. I have a confession, she said. I've never dated anyone who wasn't from my social circle before. Business people? Business people, lawyers, other people with inherited money and fancy degrees. People who understood the rules. How did that work out for you? Evelyn laughed, but it sounded a little hollow. Terribly. Lots of networking events disguised as romance, lots of conversations about portfolio management over dinner. Sounds awful. It was, which is why I'd like to try something different, if you're willing. Marcus studied her face, looking for any sign of uncertainty or politeness masquerading as interest. He found none. What did you have in mind? Dinner at my place next Friday? I'll cook. We can talk without worrying about who might be watching. You cook? I do. Not fancy, but edible. My father insisted I learn basic life skills despite having money for takeout every night. Marcus found himself smiling. I'd like that. Good. She got into her car, then rolled down the window. Marcus, for what it's worth, I think the people questioning my judgment are idiots. For what it's worth, I think you're braver than you give yourself credit for. We'll see about that. Marcus watched her drive away, then sat in his truck for several minutes before starting the engine. The afternoon had been a roller coaster of emotions, but underneath all the complications, one thing remained clear. He liked Evelyn Hart, not the CEO, not the heiress, but the woman who asked thoughtful questions and listened to his answers like they mattered. His phone rang as he pulled into traffic. Tasha. How was coffee with the mysterious Evelyn? Complicated, but good. That seems to be a theme with you two. Marcus told her about the photo, the gossip, the conversation by the river. Tasha listened without interrupting, which usually meant she was forming opinions. So, some people think she's slumming it with a mechanic, she said when he finished. That's not how she put it. But that's what it amounts to, right? I guess. And how does that make you feel? Marcus thought about it. Angry and a little embarrassed, and protective of her, which is stupid because she can obviously handle herself. It's not stupid, it's human. The question is, do you like her enough to deal with people being awful? Do you think I should? I think, Tasha said carefully, that you're one of the best men I know. And if this woman can't see that, or if she lets other people convince her not to see it, then she's not worth your time. And if she can see it, then maybe you two figure out how to build something that matters more than what strangers think. That evening, Marcus called Gus to tell him about the job at Patterson Motors and about Evelyn. Gus listened to both stories with the same patient attention. So you got the job and the girl in the same week, Gus said when Marcus finished. Maybe. It's complicated. Son, let me tell you something about complications. I met my wife at a church picnic 50 years ago. She was Methodist. I was Baptist. Her family thought I was too poor. My family thought she was too fancy. We had 6 months of everyone telling us why it wouldn't work. What happened? We stopped listening to everyone else and started listening to each other. Been married 48 years come December. Marcus smiled. Any regrets? Only that we wasted 6 months caring what other people thought, instead of 6 months getting to know each other better. That night, Marcus lay in bed thinking about river views and coffee shop conversations, about the way Evelyn's face changed when she smiled, and how she'd defended him to people he'd never meet. He thought about his mother's voice telling him to be kind, and Gus's wife choosing love over the easy path. Maybe Tasha was right. Maybe it was worth finding out if they could build something that mattered more than the gossip. His phone buzzed with a text from Evelyn. "Thank you for today, for being honest, and for not running away when things got complicated." Marcus typed back, "Thank you for not letting other people decide what's worth fighting for. See you Friday? Wouldn't miss it." Marcus set his phone aside and closed his eyes, already wondering what Evelyn's apartment looked like, what she cooked when she was trying to impress someone, whether she was as nervous about Friday as he was. Outside his window, the city hummed with its usual Saturday night energy. But inside his small bedroom, everything felt quiet and full of possibility. The week passed in a blur of anticipation and second thoughts. Marcus threw himself into his remaining work at Gus's garage, training his replacement and trying not to think too much about Friday night. But every time his phone buzzed, his heart jumped a little, hoping it was Evelyn. She texted Tuesday afternoon. "Fair warning, I'm making lasagna Friday. My grandmother's recipe, so no pressure. But 3 generations of Italian women will be judging me through you." Marcus replied, "No pressure at all. Should I bring anything?" "Just yourself, and maybe low expectations for the garlic bread." Thursday evening, Tasha stopped by his apartment with takeout Chinese food and unsolicited advice. "You're nervous," she observed, watching Marcus reorganize his already organized closet for the 3rd time. "I'm not nervous." "You alphabetized your t-shirts." Marcus looked down at the neat row of shirts hanging in perfect order. "I was just organizing." "Uh-huh." Tasha settled onto his small couch with a container of lo mein. "What are you really worried about?" Marcus sat beside her and stole a piece of chicken from her container. "What if we don't have anything to talk about when it's just us? What if the coffee shop thing was a fluke? What if you run out of conversation with someone you've been texting all week?" "We haven't been texting that much." Tasha pulled out her phone and scrolled through something. "Monday you texted me about a funny thing she said about board meetings. Tuesday it was her reaction to your story about Mrs. Peterson's cat getting stuck in her engine. Wednesday, okay, we've been texting. And you're worried you won't have anything to talk about." Put that way, it did sound ridiculous. Marcus had found himself looking forward to Evelyn's messages, small observations about her day, or questions about his work that showed she'd been thinking about their conversations. "What if her apartment is really fancy and I feel out of place?" he asked. "Then you'll feel out of place for about 10 minutes until you remember that she invited you there because she likes you, not because she wants to show off her furniture." "What if—" "Marcus." Tasha set down her chopsticks and fixed him with a serious look. "What if you just go have dinner with a woman you like and see what happens?" Friday evening arrived gray and drizzly, the kind of weather that made staying inside feel like the best idea in the world. Marcus parked outside Evelyn's building and took a moment to absorb his surroundings. The apartment complex was nice, but not ostentatious. Red brick, mature trees, the kind of place a successful professional might live without trying to impress anyone. He found her apartment on the 2nd floor and knocked, suddenly aware of the bottle of wine in his hand and wondering if he should have brought something more thoughtful. Evelyn opened the door, wearing jeans and an oversized sweater, flour dusting her hands and a slightly frazzled expression on her face. "Perfect timing," she said, stepping aside to let him in. "I was just having a minor crisis with the garlic bread." "What kind of crisis?" The kind where I might have used salt instead of sugar. Or sugar instead of salt. I can't remember which. But something's definitely wrong. Marcus followed her into the kitchen, taking in the warm lighting and the smell of tomatoes and herbs that filled the apartment. Evelyn's kitchen was lived in rather than perfect. Cookbooks stacked on the counter, a coffee mug with this morning's lipstick still on the rim, a small herb garden growing in pots on the windowsill. "Let me taste it," Marcus said, reaching for the mixing bowl. "Are you sure? It might be a disaster." He dipped a finger into the mixture and immediately started laughing. "It's sugar. Definitely sugar. Your garlic bread is going to taste like a cookie." "Oh no." Evelyn covered her face with flour-dusted hands. "I'm so sorry. I wanted everything to be perfect, and instead, I'm serving you dessert bread with dinner." "Hey!" Marcus gently pulled her hands away from her face. "It's fine. We'll make new garlic bread. Do you have more ingredients? You want to cook? On our first real date? I want to spend time with you. If that involves saving dinner from sweet garlic bread, then yes, I want to cook." Something in Evelyn's expression softened. "You don't mind?" "I love cooking. Tasha and I used to make dinner together every Sunday when we were kids. It was one of the few times the apartment felt like home." They worked together easily, Marcus mixing new garlic bread, while Evelyn checked on the lasagna and set the table. The conversation flowed as naturally as it had in the coffee shop, punctuated by small touches. Her hand on his arm as she reached around him for the olive oil, his fingers brushing hers as they passed ingredients back and forth. "So tell me about growing up with Tasha," Evelyn said, slicing fresh mozzarella. "You talk about her like she raised you instead of the other way around." "Sometimes it felt that way. Our mom worked 2 jobs to keep us fed and housed. Tasha was only 2 years younger, but she always seemed older somehow. More practical. When Mom got sick, Tasha was the one who researched treatment options and organized the medicine schedule." "That must have been hard, taking care of a parent when you were barely adults." Marcus nodded, focusing on the bread mixture to avoid the sympathy in Evelyn's voice. "It was. But it also showed me what Tasha was made of. She's tougher than she looks." "She sounds wonderful. I'd like to meet her sometime, if that's okay with you." The casual way Evelyn said it, like she was thinking beyond tonight, beyond the next few weeks, sent warmth spreading through Marcus's chest. "She'd like that. Fair warning, though. She's very protective. She'll probably grill you about your intentions." "Good. I like protective sisters." They ate dinner at Evelyn's small dining table, candles flickering between them and rain pattering against the windows. The lasagna was perfect. The garlic bread turned out better than either of them had expected, and the wine Marcus had brought paired beautifully with everything. "This is nice," Evelyn said, gesturing around the apartment. "Having someone here, I mean. I don't entertain much." "Why not?" "Work, mostly, and—" She paused, twirling pasta around her fork. "It's hard to know if people want to spend time with me, or if they want something from me, so I stopped trying to figure it out." Marcus thought about the careful way she'd approached their relationship, how long it had taken her to share even basic details about her work. "That sounds lonely." "It is, sometimes, but it's also safer." "And now?" "Now I'm having dinner with someone who fixed my car before he knew my last name, and I'm remembering what it feels like to not have to perform for anyone." Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. "You never have to perform for me." "I know. That's what makes this so scary." "Good scary. Or bad scary?" "Good scary. Like jumping off a diving board when you're not sure how deep the water is." After dinner, they moved to the living room with glasses of wine and the kind of easy intimacy that comes from sharing food and honest conversation. Evelyn's apartment was comfortable rather than impressive. Soft furniture, shelves full of books that looked actually read, photographs of family and friends mixed with artwork that seemed chosen for personal meaning rather than investment value. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said, settling beside her on the couch. "Of course." "What was it like, growing up with money? I mean, really, not the public version." Evelyn considered the question, swirling wine in her glass. "Complicated. We had everything we needed and most of what we wanted, but there were always expectations. Always people watching to see if we were worthy of what we'd been given." "That sounds exhausting." "It was. My father tried to shield us from the worst of it, but by the time I was in high school, I understood that everything I did reflected on the family name. Every grade, every friend, every mistake." "Is that why you became CEO? Family expectations?" "Partly, but also because I love the company. I grew up hearing stories about the early days, when my father was building engines in our garage, and my mother was handling the books at our kitchen table. Hart Manufacturing isn't just a business to me, it's my family's legacy." Marcus heard the weight of responsibility in her voice and understood something he hadn't before. "But being CEO means you can't just love the company anymore. You have to make the hard choices." "Exactly. And sometimes those choices affect people I've known since I was a child. Employees who watched me grow up, who came to my graduation, who send Christmas cards every year. That's why the board gossip bothers you so much. It's not just about us. It's about whether they trust your judgment in general." Evelyn looked at him with something like surprise. "How did you know that?" "Because you care about doing right by people. And if they think you're making poor personal choices, they might question your professional choices too." "You see me very clearly. I pay attention." They talked until nearly midnight, the conversation ranging from childhood memories to future dreams, from silly preferences to deeper fears. Marcus learned that Evelyn sang in the shower, was afraid of spiders, and had once considered becoming a teacher before family obligations pulled her toward the business. Evelyn learned that Marcus had taught himself to cook by watching YouTube videos, that he sent half his paycheck to help with Tasha's school loans, and that he'd never been on a vacation longer than a weekend. "Never?" Evelyn asked, incredulous. "Never had the time or money, but someday I want to drive cross-country just to see what's out there." "That sounds wonderful. I'd love to do something like that." "Really? You don't seem like the road trip type." "Shows how much you know about me." She smiled. "I've never done anything spontaneous in my life. Everything's always planned and scheduled and approved by someone else." "So, what would you do? If you could be spontaneous?" Evelyn leaned back against the couch, eyes bright with wine and possibility. "Get in a car and drive until I found a place I'd never been. Stay in cheap motels and eat at diners where nobody knows my name. See what America looks like when you're not rushing through airports or sitting in conference rooms. We should do that sometime." The words hung between them, bold and full of promise. Evelyn's eyes searched his face. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. Though you might have to teach me how to use vacation time. I'm not very good at not working." "I think we could figure it out together." At the door, Marcus hesitated. The evening had been perfect, easy and warm and real, in a way that made him want to stay. But something told him that leaving now, while everything felt hopeful and uncomplicated, was the right choice. "Thank you," he said, "for dinner. For this. Thank you for not running away when my garlic bread turned into a dessert. Thank you for letting me help fix it." They stood close in the doorway, the space between them charged with possibility. Marcus reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "I'd like to kiss you," he said softly, "but only if you want me to." I want you to. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, both of them aware that this was a line they were crossing. But when Evelyn's arms came up around his neck and she pressed closer, Marcus deepened the kiss, tasting wine and promise, and something that felt remarkably like coming home. When they broke apart, both were breathing a little harder. Wow, Evelyn whispered. Yeah, wow. I should probably let you go before I do something scandalous like invite you to stay. Marcus smiled, pressing one more quick kiss to her lips. Rain check? Definitely a rain check. Marcus was halfway home when his phone buzzed with a text from Evelyn. Thank you for the perfect evening. Sweet dreams. He replied, Thank you for letting me see who you are when you're not performing. Sleep well? But Marcus didn't sleep well. He lay awake thinking about flour-dusted hands and honest conversation, about the way Evelyn had looked when she talked about road trips and spontaneous adventures. Mostly, he thought about how right everything had felt. The cooking together, the easy silences, the way she fit perfectly in his arms when he kissed her goodnight. His phone buzzed again around midnight. I can't sleep. Keep thinking about road trips and terrible garlic bread and how much I like you. Marcus smiled in the darkness. I can't sleep either. Keep thinking about how beautiful you look tonight and how much I want to see you again. Tomorrow's Saturday. Want to help me grocery shop? I promise to read the labels more carefully this time. It's a date. Fair warning. I'm very serious about produce selection. Perfect. I need all the help I can get. Marcus set his phone aside and finally let himself relax. Tomorrow, there would be grocery stores and normal, everyday life. There would probably be more complications, more people with opinions about what they were doing and why it was wrong. But tonight, there had been lasagna and laughter, and the promise of road trips with a woman who saw him clearly and liked what she saw. Tonight, there had been the kind of kiss that changed everything. And for the first time since he'd learned Evelyn's last name, Marcus fell asleep without worrying about what other people might think. Because what he and Evelyn were building together was starting to feel bigger than anyone else's opinions. In her own apartment across town, Evelyn lay awake thinking about strong hands making garlic bread and gentle voices asking careful questions. She thought about the way Marcus had looked at her kitchen, not impressed or intimidated, just interested in being wherever she was. She thought about board members and gossip columnists and all the people who would have something to say about a CEO dating a mechanic. And then she thought about Marcus's hands in hers and the way he'd made her feel like the most interesting person in the room. Let them talk, she decided. Some things were worth the whispers. Some things were worth fighting for.